What's up, guys? You're listening to a December 15th edition of the SplashTag Podcast. I'm Matt, and today I'm going to be talking a lot of college hoops with a friend of mine from high school, and we recently reconnected. And I asked if he could come on the podcast. And I've been really looking for someone to chop up some college hoops with. So I'm really excited to have him on. He's actually beyond. He's also the host of his own podcast, actually, the Real Underdogs podcast, real as in like film reel, as well as a contributor to Wizards Extra. So he writes, has his own podcast. So definitely recommend that you guys check out his content. So without further ado, joining me today, and hopefully, many times down the line, Justin, how you doing, man?
I'm just a co-host, man. Don't gas me up too much, but I'm doing good.
Yeah. A couple weeks ago, just for a little back, a couple weeks ago, I was it was like feast week, or there was a lot of college basketball going on, and I was like, damn, the co-host from last year, Joe, who you actually know, went to high school with us as well. He's taking some time off, and so I was like, shit, I really need someone to just chop up some college hoops with. And I know that you covered what you were, for context, you were a student at Virginia Tech. You graduated, but when you were there, you followed Tech very closely, and also you seem to be pretty well versed with like the general college basketball landscape. And so I just shot you a text. I was like, hey, dude, maybe we could do weekly college basketball podcast. Be the new Titus and Tate, although they've started their own podcast. They've started a new podcast, but shout out to Titus and Tate. So yeah, really excited to have you on. I'm just really excited to finally be able to chop up some college hoops with someone.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. I think that this all started when we added each other on Twitter a couple times, like sometime during March of last year, I think.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? I think it was something
we were both. Well, we were both at the Virginia Tech, LSU, and then the Duke. Sorry, Michigan State, LSU, Virginia Tech, Duke. Yeah, we were both at the Sweet 16 in DC, and then the second game was the Tech Duke game, which obviously came down to the wire. And then I ran into you outside of Capital One Arena.
That was a bad time. That was a very bad time.
Yeah.
Especially since Buzz left his job 2 days later.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it was full rebuild.
What's interesting is I feel like that was the worst kept secret when it came to coaching changes.
Oh yeah.
I feel like in February there was already talk of hey, Buzz is probably out at Virginia Tech after this year. And everyone knew he wanted to go to Yeah, go ahead.
The funny thing is that Buzz was already doing his usual shit with the press, leaking stuff, trying to get people to talk about what a great coach he was. But the thing is, because he was in Virginia Tech, there's no press around, no one really cared, and so it kind of just flew under the radar. He was definitely trying to pull the same stuff that he was pulling at Marquette right before he left, but nobody cared. The only person that really got it was on One Shining Podcast. That was the first that I had really heard of it. Where I think it was Tate that was talking about it, and it was Titus. It was definitely Titus that was talking about it, and I remember listening to the podcast, and I was like, man, that's crazy. But
yeah. I heard, so I listened to the CBS Eye on College Basketball podcast, and I would say that when you compare them to Titus and Tate, they cover the sport in a much more professional context. I feel like they actually talk to coaches day in, day out, and they have to be very professional. So they don't have phrases like good guy, bad guy, that type of thing. But what they were saying was. What they were saying on the CBS podcast was that apparently years ago, Buzz told one of them, I forget which of the co-hosts, I think it was Gary Parrish. He told Gary Parrish that unless you're at the job that you're going to retire at, you want to move around every couple of years, because eventually, even if you do a good job, eventually the fan base gets tired of you, and they kind of a good example of this would be Jamie Dixon at Pitt, right? Was very successful for a long time, but eventually at some point, because they were not, doing more than just making the tournament and like winning games, the fan base just was kind of like, whatever, right?
Yeah, I feel that job's impossible now, though.
Oof. Yeah, I feel like you see that type of like jadedness with fan bases, unless you're like, Roy Williams at UNC, Tom Izzo at Michigan State, Coach K, Coach Calipari, Bill Self. There's like very select jobs, and maybe Tony Bennett can enter that stratosphere. Maybe he's got a good chance, but it's really hard to just keep a fan base satisfied. Like, I mean, look at what happened with Tom Crean at Indiana. He wins the Big Ten one year, and then the next year he loses OG Anunoby to injury, and then they miss the tournament, and then he gets fired. So it can be you can do a good job one year, and it's really easy to just fall out of favor just with one bad year. So I think Buzz thinks in the mindset of, I'm gonna build up, I'm gonna do a good job for a couple years and then find my next job.
I can do you one better. I believe this was an article in the Roanoke Times. I don't remember exactly who wrote it, but it was at his introductory press conference. And Buzz was talking with one of the reporters, and the room was full, and everyone was excited. And Buzz turned to the reporter and said, "I can tell you exactly how this ends." Allegedly. This was before he'd even coached the team for a day. And he was already saying that. He's a weird guy, but I do want to talk about how coach. I do want to talk about how much Texas A&M sucks ass though. So far this year.
They're 3-5 right now.
I've got their stats pulled up. They are 436th in points per game at 56.3. They are 436th allegedly.
Wait, there's only 350 college teams.
I'm on ESPN.com, man. I can send you the screenshot there.
Wait, yeah, send me the. Wait, what? That's.
Wait, I'm gonna.
Wow, that's wonky.
I'm gonna text this to you.
Wait, send this to me real quick. Yeah, all right.
I'm gonna send this to you for proof. They are 436th in points per game. They are tied for 376th in rebounds per game with 32.3, and they are tied for 397th at 10.3 assists per game.
This is weird. Wait, there's only something's up with ESPN, but the point being that
they're worse than bad. They're worse than all the teams.
It's been a tough go around. It's been a tough first go around, but for Buzz, but
yeah, they lost to Harvard by 11 points.
Wow, I didn't realize only 56 points a game. Wow.
Yeah, they lost to Temple by 23 points.
Well, I mean, to be totally fair, so Buzz he got the job, the tech job in 2014, and it wasn't until 2016-17 where they finally made the tournament. So I would say give.
Oh, you broke up.
My bad. I was just saying, I think Buzz, I'd say give him like 2 years or so at A&M. He'll have them back to the tournament.
Define his OKGs. To hashtag get better. There's.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how's the Tech fan base feel about Buzz? Like.
It's hard to say. I think that there's a segment of the Tech fan base that's very appreciative of him building the program kind of back from the dead. But
yeah,
there's another part of the fan base that looks at it like he came into a situation where like up was the only place he could really go. And he didn't do well. I mean, okay. Like, I know that Seth Greenberg only got to the tournament, once, and then, became a star for ESPN, weirdly. And, but he really didn't recruit better than Seth Greenberg, and the team ultimately didn't win much of anything of consequence, except for the Charleston Classic last year, I guess. I don't know. That was a good game. But
although, what seed when Seth Greenberg reached the tournament? What seed was Tech?
I think Tech was a 5 seed. This was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was 07.
Yeah, that was a good team too. I think that team was probably more talented than any of the teams that Buzz had. But Buzz did, I think so. Except
he had a pseudo lottery pick.
If you take out Nikhil,
okay, that's fair.
Then I think that team was talented. Because Greenberg couldn't recruit, and people forget that. But Greenberg was probably a better recruiter than Buzz was.
I gotta defend Greenberg. I actually think Greenberg was a good coach. When you look at where the jobs he had and then how he did at the jobs, like he won at Long Beach State, South Florida, and then he was okay at Tech. Like there was one year, I think it was 2011, where they should have made the tournament, but they didn't. So
there were like 3 years in a row where they were like on the bubble.
What's weird is
one of those years, the bubble team that got in was VCU, and everyone was mad about that. But then VCU made the Final Four,
right.
So it was
That's right.
Yeah.
What's weird about, I guess, Seth Greenberg's time at Tech was that was back when the ACC was only sending a couple teams to the tournament, and obviously your shoo-ins would be Duke, Carolina. That was the point being, it was a very different ACC, so I feel like he didn't have as many opportunities to get those marquee wins in the conference as you do in today's ACC.
Yeah, I mean, the ACC is just so deep these days. I mean, there's no conference that even remotely compares, in my opinion.
You think so? Now. Well, I guess that's a good transition.
I mean, I think that there are other conferences that'll have more teams in the tournament, but I think that, and I also think that maybe the very bottom of the ACC isn't as good as maybe.
I will say the very bottom of the ACC is
pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
But
like, especially now that Kai Bowman's not, carrying Boston College on his back. They're pretty bad. But
on that note, I wanted to ask you. So let's transition into talking about this season. I know that was a little bit more Buzz Williams talk than I anticipated, but
I still have a lot to say.
Yeah, no, that's totally understandable. But I'm curious, which conference, if you had to power rank, let's say like the top, the 5 best conferences, which for this season, kind of what would your thought process be in that? Because for me personally, I don't think the ACC's been one of the best 2 conferences this year.
It's hard to say. I think the 5 you have to put up there in no particular order are like the ACC, Big 10,
Big 12,
Big 12,
Big East.
I
think those are the best 4, and
there's a drop off. I think that the SEC, I guess you have to put in there.
Would you take the SEC over the Pac-12? Would you take the SEC over Pac-12?
Oh, that's so tough.
You're basically down to Kentucky, Auburn, Florida if they get their shit together, and Tennessee, Arkansas, versus Washington, Arizona,
I think
Colorado, Pac-12.
I think that I think the Pac-12 has less shitty teams.
Yeah, but I mean, you say that, but then like, no disrespect to this fan base, but like then there's Washington State.
Hey, they had Klay Thompson and Tony Bennett for one
once
year.
Upon a time, yeah. But so last year, I think the last couple of years they have just been atrocious. They've been also last year. Granted, they got a coaching change, but last year, Cal was really bad. But they did get a coaching change, and they've been better. But obviously, they're still kind of on. They're just improving from rock bottom. But I don't know. It's tough because
I mean, I think that at the bottom of the Pac-12, there's like 3 teams that just absolutely suck. But then at the bottom of the SEC, there's like 5 teams that absolutely absolutely sucks.
So what?
And granted,
A&M,
it's a bigger conference.
A&M,
Alabama.
Alabama has been worse than I thought.
Honestly, you almost have to throw Georgia in there. I know they probably have the number 1 pick in the draft, but
Yeah,
they
I mean,
almost
they
lost
haven't
to
looked
Chaminade.
good. They
They
haven't
don't
looked
look good.
good. They don't look good, but I'm holding out
Yeah.
hope. I'm holding out hope only because I want to see if there's a top 5 draft pick, I want to see him in the tournament, right? So I'm holding out hope, but like based on what we've seen so far, I have to agree with you. They have not looked particularly good so far.
No, I want to see like
Vanderbilt, South Carolina. I don't
Vanderbilt's
think have
really
looked
bad.
particularly good. Yeah, Vanderbilt lost to Liberty. Granted, Liberty's probably one of the
Liberty's
better
really
mid-majors.
good.
Liberty's one of the
really
better
good.
mid-majors this year, but they did lose to Liberty last night, and they also lost to
What I saw on your notes where you had like Liberty as the 47th overall seed. I think they're going to be higher than that. I think they're going to be a one. I think they're going to be a 1 bid qualifier that is maybe like a 10 seed or like an 8 seed.
Okay, so for now, I have them as a 12. I have them as the best 12, but I would have no pushback to an argument that they should be a 10 an 11. And then if they like run through their conference, then I absolutely would have no issue having them as like a 10.
Because we played them last in the tournament. The team's good. The team's really good, and they brought back almost everybody.
Yeah, and they've
no surprise they're undefeated.
If they can if they can win at LSU, I could see the real argument for them being like a 10, 11, or 10. I think right now they're probably an 11 or a 12 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that when it's all said and done, they're going to be one of those teams that I think they're going to have. Well, what's their KenPom ranking right now? Actually, let's think. Oh, they're only 69 in KenPom, but I think that's going to go up as race is 69.
Race.
One by Tate. Liberty of all people.
Shout out to Tate.
Yeah, but aren't they? Sorry.
If they can beat LSU, if they can win at LSU, that would help them out. And then I assume the problem is I don't think their KenPom is gonna go up unless they absolutely dominate their conference opponents, which is very in play.
Yeah, well, the problem is that they're a team that has really good defense and okay offense, and KenPom I feel like kind of gives the edge to teams that are just brutally efficient on offense. And unless you're UVA. Yeah. And even then, UVA is only 10th in KenPom. I don't know how great UVA is going to be this year. I don't know. Yeah. I think they're going to improve. I believe in that team, actually.
I think, it depends on what your expectation is, right? Because the offense is just, I've said this actually on a previous podcast, but when you watch the offense, you just know, okay, this team is probably not going to get to a Final Four if the offense is this. But the defense is good enough to win a lot of games in the regular season, and when you do that, you're gonna in the ACC, you're gonna have a good resume. So like the seeding, I feel like they could be like 4 or 5 seed, but best case 3 seed. But I don't know, that offense. I struggled when I watched the offense. I'm like, oh, this is kind of like
basketball.
What people. This is like the stereotypical. This is like the stereotypical UVA offense, but this time it's actually the offense. Whereas in the past, casual fans would just assume it was some ugly, like horrible offense, but then there would be someone like a DeAndre Hunter or a Justin Anderson to like dispel that. But this year I don't really know. I don't really know where that firepower is coming from.
DK taking shoot threes now.
He's been the most promising. The most promising.
Yeah, I'm looking at your schedule right now and the games that you've played, and it's so weird because like you blasted Syracuse, but they're probably going to be bad.
Syracuse, yeah.
You beat a good Vermont team by 6.
Anthony, dude, I was in the building for that. Anthony Lamb was cooking in the second half. He had 25 in the second half. I literally told people, I was sitting next to me, but I said, yo, there's this dude on Vermont, Anthony Lamb. I think he's going to go for 30. And then he straight up went for 30. So, although to be fair, I said that Cole Anthony was going to go for like 32. And that did not quite happen.
And he was
so I'm 1 for 2.
5 of 18 from the field, like 12 points or something.
Well, I'm sure we'll talk about UNC in a little bit, but yeah, the schedule. UVA has the schedule hasn't been. We'll see what happens when they play. At Chapel Hill. Some of the other more intense ACC games. I don't even know who's going to guard Vernon Carey, but we'll see. We'll see.
Hey, Jay Huff.
All day. I wonder what. I'm trying to think. I think I'm willing to bet Jay Huff's probably maybe 210, 220, and then Vernon Carey's 275, maybe 260. He's built his dad was an NFL player.
Yeah.
So he's just a big dude.
Yeah, I actually have a friend who's a Duke basketball fan, and Vernon Carey, I think he tweeted out his Snapchat handle and told people to add him, and so she decided to add him, and he added her back and views her story every once in a while.
Wow. Okay.
And
what a nice guy.
I keep telling her to try to slide in, but she won't do it. So
that's
yeah.
Funny.
Hey, nice game, Verdon.
Yeah, man. Gosh, I don't want to say anything I regret too much here. But did you? Okay, I'm gonna be very vague, intentionally very vague. But did you follow a very certain notable Duke basketball player last year who got exposed on Snapchat?
Oh, who was? You can cut it out later. Just tell me who it is.
Okay, I'll tell you. I'll text it to you after.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyhow, moving on. So to go back to the original question I posed. What conference is the 5th best? Would you go Pac-12 or would you go SEC? Or would you be bold and go for the AAC? Although I don't think that's the right answer.
No, not this year.
So SEC.
The AAC has no depth this year.
Yeah, that's fair. So SEC, you would pick SEC over Pac-12?
It's so hard. I think that the SEC is going to get more teams into the tournament.
Yeah, I agree.
I think I'm going to go with the SEC.
Okay.
Even though they have more teams that suck.
Yeah, that's fair. So I guess moving on we're in a little bit, we're going to do a fun exercise. Originally I was thinking of doing a full, when I pitched this to you, just to give the audience some context, I was like, yo, let's do a full bracket selection and creation. But now that considering we're exactly 3 months out from Selection Sunday, it'll literally it's literally March 15th is Selection Sunday. So we're literally 3 months out. But then I realized a lot of teams haven't finished non-conference play. For instance, Kentucky's going to play Ohio State and Louisville in the next 2 weeks. And
oh, wow.
Depending on how they do in those, that totally changes how we view their resume, right? Because right now they've played no one outside of really Michigan State. So it's kind of hard to see Kentucky right now, but then we have a much better gauge when we see them play Ohio State, Louisville. So today I'm thinking we could just go through the top 16, so the top 4 seed lines. But before we do that, my next question to you is, what do you think? It feels like around this time of year, there's a clear, I don't even know. I hate to use this word because everyone's gonna roll their eyes, but I feel like there's a clear theme or a couple storylines that are these are, you should watch college basketball this year. What do you feel like the resonating theme so far that you've seen this year is
there's just so much parity.
Yeah,
it feels like there's 40 good teams that could beat each other any given night.
Yeah,
and I think that hasn't been true in many years.
Yeah, you read my mind. I've told you this over text. I think this reminds me a lot of the 2015-16 season, where there were a lot of good teams, but no great teams. There's certainly very few teams from that year that you would put on your all-time, all-decade teams. But on top of that, I remember that year, it seemed like every week a top 10 team lost to an unranked opponent. I think there were 6 teams that ended up being ranked number 1 that year. And honestly, I think that this year, I wouldn't be surprised if. So I think the record is 7 or 8. I wouldn't be surprised if that gets broken this year because. So we were already at. I think we're already at 4. We've had Michigan State, Kentucky, Duke, Louisville. So we're at 4 right now, but there's going to be a 5th next week since Louisville lost. I don't know, like. You have 4 right now, throw in Ohio State, Kansas, probably being number 1 at some point. That's 6. And then I don't know, like I feel like it wouldn't be too hard to get a 7th and an 8th. Like it's still December, you know?
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts. Like I agree with you. There's a lot of teams that are just kind of like pretty comparable. Like if you're comparing, team in the top 5 to team in like the 15 to 20 range, I really don't know if there's that much of a difference. Like if Auburn played Kansas on a neutral court like 10 times, I feel like it's like one team wins 6 times, the other team wins 4 times, that type of deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Memphis does for the rest of the year. Because I really like Memphis. I don't know if you do.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
If I were to pick a national champion today, it would be Memphis.
Really?
I think that the one thing that a lot of people say about Memphis is like, oh, well, they're all freshmen. But I think all of these guys, except for Boogie Ellis, have played together at some point in their lives. These guys know each other. They know how they play. And, there's a lot of AAU connections, especially with Penny Hardaway and with James Wiseman and some of the other guys. And these guys know each other.
Yeah.
And they've been growing together without probably their best player. They just beat Tennessee, and it was a gut check game. That game, not to overreact to one game, but that game, Tennessee played it at their pace. It was very ugly, and it was an absolute rock fight. And Memphis was down 2 starters because they also didn't have Lester Quinones. And he's really good. He's really impressed me so far this year.
And the fact that they were able to stay in that game, and even though they missed so many shots, the fact that they still pulled through, that did show me a lot about a team that is primarily freshmen and very few upperclassmen. That did show me a lot on the road in a rivalry game. That did show me a lot.
Very few teams that young would have been able to gut out that win.
Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting because I definitely see Memphis as a top seed. I don't know if I would pick them to win the national title for a variety of reasons.
Yeah. They're not going to be a number 1 seed because I don't think their resume is going to be good enough.
Yeah,
the AAC is pretty down this year.
Yeah,
I mean, if you talk about a conference that has teams that suck.
Dude, the problem with the AAC is that the bottom 4th is just awful. Tulane, East Carolina. Trying to think.
South Florida.
That's right. South Florida is in the AAC.
And Cincinnati's not been great.
Cincinnati's been. Dude, did you see what happened last night with Cincy?
Oh, Colgate,
dude.
Oh, so I saw the buy game tweet about. Oh wait, I heard about this. Wait, but keep going.
Okay, so real quick, before I talk about the game, I just want to say before the season, I was buying high on Colgate as a potential Cinderella, a mid-major that'll romp through their conference and then end up in the tournament and win a game or two because they have a guy, Jordan Burns, who I think he's gonna get a shot at the NBA. Jordan Burns. He has a little bit of Dame Lillard in him. Just the way he can shoot off the dribble, create his own shot. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I say that because Dame was obviously a mid-major star. But when I watch him, so basically, anyhow, I'm buying high on Colgate as a potential mid-major that could do some damage because they also have the reigning Patriot League Player of the Year. It wasn't Jordan Burns. It was this other dude. I can't say his name. John Axel and then something super difficult to pronounce. But anyways, so there's those two, and I'm buying high on Colgate. So I was like, okay, let me see if they can beat Cincy because every time Colgate's played a high major team this year, they haven't won.
They gotten pretty blasted.
Yeah, they got
so
smacked by Clemson. They got smacked by Auburn. So I was like, okay, let me. I'm gonna keep my eyes on this. So I saw that they won by 1. I was like, oh, dope. Okay, that's a solid win for a team that plays in the Patriot League. Then I saw the very end of the game. So it's 64-66. Colgate's down. They tie the game up, and then Cincy has like 10 seconds to score, right? And then Cincy's best player, Cumberland, he dribbles the ball up, and then with 5 seconds to go, he just jacks it up from half court. Bricks misses the shot, and then Colgate gets the rebound, and Cumberland fouls right away. And then they go 1 for 2 from the line, and then Colgate wins. So I'm seeing like from people that are like writers and stuff. They're saying that there's an injury to Cumberland, and there's apparently a feud between him and the new coach. So I say all that to say, since he's not looking great this year, but
yeah, he's taking all the shots that Mick Cronin wouldn't let him take.
Yeah, and dude, I know the other day you screenshotted Cole Anthony's like efficiency, and you're like, yo, this is concerning. Take a look at Jaron Cumberland's efficiency. Like, it's worse. And what's crazy is he's a senior, like, who won AAC Player of the Year last year. Like, you know, I think he's shooting like 35% from the field. So not great by any stretch.
He's not even the leading scorer this year.
Oh, that's
disgusting.
You talk about someone who maybe should have left and stayed in the draft. Because like he probably could have been a second-round pick, early second maybe. Like he was, his stock was like decent after last season. Mm-hmm. So that's tough to see. But yeah, I agree with you. I do to go back to your earlier point about Memphis. I think that Memphis is a good team. They've definitely showed me enough. But it's tough for me to pick them to win 6 straight games in the NCAA tournament, especially with a coach so new, inexperienced. Like the only track record for that really happening in recent history is like Kevin Ollie, and that was kind of a weird year anyway. So.
And that wasn't even an amazing UConn team, to be honest. I mean, it was Shabazz Napier, Ryan
Boatwright.
Boatwright.
This Memphis team reminds me. I think I've told you this, but this Memphis team reminds me of the Kentucky team from 2 years ago with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Kevin Knox. But the thing is, that Kentucky team played in a good SEC, and this Memphis team plays in a so-so AAC. So I feel like this Memphis team is going to win more games.
Mm-hmm.
But like the overall makeup of the team, I'll put it this way: it makes me think of if that Kentucky team replaced Kevin Knox with like a top 5 center.
I could see it
because
I think that this Memphis team is run a lot less through the guards though than that team was.
Yeah, that team, it was like freshman PJ Washington, Jared Vanderbilt played like 10 games, Nick Richards. It was like there were a lot of young guys who were like highly touted, and sometimes
so Shai Gilgeous-Alexander kind of took control of that team. It was his team.
That's true. Absolutely.
I don't think this Memphis team is going to be like Lester Quinones's team.
I agree, but I do just feel like with that Kentucky team, there were times you saw like the highs were high and the lows were low just because of the youth, and there was really no upperclassmen on that team. And then there were like random games where Wenyan Gabriel would go off, and then another random game where Hamidou Diallo would hit a couple threes and then dunk on someone. Like the point being, like I feel like that was a very Jekyll and Hyde young team, and then by tournament time they really had it rolling. I could see Memphis being similar, except, like I said, Memphis plays in a weaker conference, so I feel like Memphis is going to rattle off more wins. And they do have, like, a quote-unquote, like, superstar in James Wiseman when he returns.
That's why I think this team reminds me a little bit more of the Kentucky team with Julius Randle, James Young, the Harrison twins. I think,
interesting.
I think that it reminds me more of that team because you've got a star down low.
Okay.
And you've got some really good guards that are still kind of figuring it out. I think that the reason that this Memphis team is going to be better is because these guys know each other a lot better.
That's fair.
Almost all of them played together in AAU except for Boogie Ellis, at least in some way, shape, or form. And you already see they're gutting out wins early in the year that Kentucky team just couldn't gut out. But that Kentucky team got it together by the end. But
that, to be fair, though,
a lot of it's because of Calipari, though. But
yeah.
I think that this team already has that sense of togetherness just innate because they know each other so well.
That's fair. The one thing I will say to that is that the Julius Randle Kentucky team, I felt that the talent was a lot higher end as a whole. Like, I'm talking like the Harrison twins were the top guards in their class. Dakari Johnson was like one of the best centers. Willie Cauley-Stein would end up being a lottery pick. Like, I don't know if I see quite that level of talent in terms of the whole roster as like this Memphis team, but I definitely can hear you when you mentioned like having a superstar down low and then a lot of young guys and then maybe clicking a little later and whatnot. So I definitely can see the argument for that.
Yeah, I also think that I think that Kentucky team was pretty overrated in the recruiting rankings.
I agree. Well, James Young ended up being a first rounder, but I don't know if this team has a James Young. I know it didn't work out for James Young in the long run in the NBA, but
I thought he had it though. I thought James Young and Aaron Harrison were going to I thought they were going to have it. I kind of knew that Andrew Harrison wasn't going to be an amazing player, but I thought that Aaron Harrison, James Young, Julius Randle, I thought those guys were going to be solid NBA players at worst.
Yeah, unfortunately, well, I don't even think Aaron Harrison's in the league.
Is he in the G League? Is he in the G League or is he overseas?
I'm gonna Google this real quick. I know Andrew Harrison was on the Warriors G League team.
Yeah.
Where is Aaron Harrison? He is abroad. He's in Turkey.
Oh wow.
Damn. For a dude who hit some of the most incredibly clutch March Madness shots.
Mm-hmm.
For a big time program, I can't believe he's in Turkey.
Yeah, hey, it be like that sometimes.
Yeah.
Andrew Harrison couldn't beat out Kai Bowman for that last Warriors roster spot or whatever.
Damn it. Damn.
Kai Bowman's been good this year, though. I don't know if you've been watching many Warriors games. I've actually watched a lot of Warriors games because
There's just a lot of young guys.
It's just so many young guys, and it's guys that I knew about in college, like
that's
Kai Bowman, Jordan Poole, shooting like 22% from the field or whatever. Like Eric Paschall, who is eating, by the way, at the NBA level.
Yeah,
which I didn't really expect that, but I knew he would be okay.
I like that pick for the Warriors. I didn't like their swaggy Poole pick in the first round. I definitely was not. I was like, yo, if you wanted Jordan Poole, take him in the 40s and the 50s. Like, why take him at 28? I felt like that was a missed opportunity, but I did like the Paschall pick.
I mean, Jordan Poole is definitely a first round talent. He just doesn't have top 70 decision making.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, if you want to talk about Cole Anthony's efficiency, you should look at Jordan Poole's NBA stat lines so far.
Okay, real quick. Before we go into our little bracketing exercise, I want to just quickly talk about Cole Anthony, because why not? He's supposed to be one of the top players in this class, top draft pick. I got to see him in the flesh in John Paul Jones. And gotta say, that game, he had an awful game. Like, I was actually so disappointed because I wanted to see him, like, keep the game interesting, you know? And I think Tate mentioned this on their podcast, but I swear to God. So, for context, Kihei Clark was guarding him, right? And he's, like, 6 inches taller than Kihei, and he's more athletic, and he's a better scorer, period. Like, there's no debate about that. So, what really disappointed me with Cole Anthony was that, and granted, this is just one game that I saw him in person, but what I was really confused because every time it felt like he had a clear attack, like path to attack the basket, he would pass. And then it felt like every time he was like being crowded, like they were crowded in the paint, or like he didn't have a good shot, he would shoot it, which just confused the shit out of me. It was like every time, I swear, I was like, oh shit, he's gonna drive, and then he would dump it down to Baycott or Garrison Brooks, and then every time I was like, oh shit, they're gonna dump it down low to Garrison Brooks, he would shoot it. So that was kind of disappointing. And he also, granted, I know a lot of players. I'm not saying there's anything like this is a bad thing necessarily, but the ref made a couple questionable calls on him, and I definitely saw him get like a little frustrated, like in his, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
And
that's
beyond that,
college though.
Yeah, beyond that, like essentially, I feel like every Cole Anthony game has been very like hit or miss. Like he looked incredible against Notre Dame, right?
He's only had like 2 good games, hasn't he?
I think it maybe against Notre Dame.
He had good games against Notre Dame. I think Gardner-Webb, but that doesn't really count. And he was pretty good against Michigan. But
yeah,
really, other than that, he's been well. And he was pretty good against Oregon too.
Yeah, he was. I do remember him having moments against Oregon. So my question to you is: do you think that do you think UNC is gonna? I feel, because I personally am of the opinion that UNC and Cole Anthony are gonna get better than where they are right now. What's your gauge on the Cole Anthony experience? Because I feel like heading into the year there was talk of, oh, maybe he's gonna be the exciting player that everyone talks about, like Alonzo Ball, Trae Young, Zion Williamson. Although Zion's not a guard, but still. And so far it's been very hit or miss.
Honestly, I think the team's just not very good right now, and it's not really set up for him to succeed. I think that if he were on a team where there were a lot more credible offensive threats, I think that he'd be really good. Like if you were put him on that UCLA team with TJ Leaf and Aaron Holiday or whatever, I think he does really well. But
okay,
I don't think that there are just many guys that can really score. But my guy Anthony Harris,
I was gonna say
he's coming back and he can really shoot it.
Dude, they need some outside shooting.
Yeah, for sure.
You can't just dump it into Baycott and Garrison Brooks all the time. Like, don't get me wrong, Garrison Brooks and Baycott, they've been fine, but when the spacing is off, dumping it down low to them is just not the solution. Like dumping it to them more down low is not the solution when there's no shooting. But yeah, Anthony Harris, he played against his debut was against UVA, but it was kind of in garbage time. Like it was like towards the end when the game was kind of over, so it was really hard for me to gauge, how he'll be. But we'll see. Maybe he could be the solution in terms of just giving them a credible threat from the outside.
Yeah, from the 703.
Yeah,
what's it called, the 6th?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that if they find another credible outside scoring threat, then we'll have to reevaluate. Right now, the sample size is no longer small, and what you're looking at right now is an inefficient offensive player who doesn't make great decisions, but he can be electrifying. It's like bad Russ.
Bad Russ. The worst case is
better shooter.
The worst case is that he's like a more athletic Austin Rivers, which is not a good thing. I'm talking like Duke Austin Rivers.
Oh yeah.
Which is like the worst case. Which, God, I hope that's not the case. Only because I want there to be a guy to like. I want there to be. I want Cole Anthony to be a fun watch, but
I mean,
I would like to see him improve his decision making / shot selection, because sometimes it just feels like he's kind of forcing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you take a look, he's at 6.3 rebounds, 3.4 assists, 3.8 turnovers, 1.9 steals, and 3 personal fouls a game. So no matter what's happening, he's involved
in a lot. Somehow. He's very involved. Yeah, that's true.
And UNC will go as he goes. I don't think that. I feel like if Cole Anthony drops like 26 points on like 10 of 18 shooting or whatever, UNC is going to win. I don't think they're going to lose if Cole Anthony has those kinds of games.
Yeah, that's fair. Real quick, actually, one last thing I wanted to throw at you before going into our little bracket exercise. Do you think VCU could be a top 4 seed this year?
VCU is really talented, but
take a look at their resume real quick.
They've still got Marcus Evans, De'Riante Jenkins, Marco Santos Silva. Oh, De'Riante Jenkins has been
Santos Silva's been good.
Isaac Van, my guy.
What I was trying to do, like I was just doing a little surfing on the web, and I was trying to see, like, are there certain programs this year that could have like one of their best teams ever? So I was doing like a little dive on VCU history in terms of like, and I'm talking in terms of like postseason seeding. So their best year, they were a 2 seed in the 80s, but then since then they've never been better than a 5. So I was wondering, could this be like a 4 seed? I don't know. Their resume has been solid so far, but
I think they need a win against Dayton, because I think that they're in the Atlantic 10, right?
Yeah, they play Dayton twice. If they run through, if they win the A10, beat Dayton once, and then win at Wichita State, that could be a 4.
Yeah,
I'm thinking.
And honestly, 2 3-point losses to quality teams, Purdue and
Tennessee.
So
yeah, literally, if they had
one against LSU, wins,
if they either got the Purdue or the Tennessee game, one of those, I feel like they would have been in a better spot. But
to be fair, I think Purdue is I think they're a good, not great team. I think that UVA game was mostly a fluke. Purdue's good, but I don't think they're.
I don't think that. I'll put it this way: I don't think they're. Granted, I might eat absolute crow for saying this, because Matt Painter's always done a good job at keeping the team relevant, but I don't think Purdue's in that top 4 of the Big Ten.
No, I don't think so either.
I think it's Michigan State, Ohio State, Maryland, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but no, I'm with you. Like, I think that the way I look at it is, like, every college team, I'd say 50 to 60% of the time they play kind of like as they are, like as their coaching and roster would suggest. And then I'd say like 20% of the time they play above, like they play like above what they normally are. Like I'm talking like a lot better than, and another 20-30% of the time they sometimes will play worse. And what's interesting is I've heard some people theorize that, like, the way you can tell who's going to be good in March is you take the teams, you look at how teams perform when they play like below average, and teams that still like can gut out games and like hang in when they're doing like when they're not having their average game. Those are the teams that people say you should bank on. I don't know. I haven't tested it, but that's an interesting theory. Yeah, I mean, Memphis yesterday was definitely a good test of that, right? Like that. I'd say Memphis and Tennessee, both of them yesterday, were not playing particularly up to what you would expect. So that's an interesting theory that I've heard.
Yeah, it's not a great Atlantic 10 this year.
Honestly. Yeah, it's Richmond might actually be in the mix, which is interesting.
Duquesne's undefeated.
I'm disappointed in Davidson.
Yeah,
they got Kellen Grady and then John Axel. The other, I can't say his name. The other guy, John Axel, and they're sub 500 right now. And every time they played a quality opponent, they've lost, and then they lost to some bad opponents too. So it looks like Davidson has to win the A10 tournament, which is, when
it's probably not going to happen.
It's not the spot you want to be in.
Yeah, I mean, losing to Auburn by 10, that's excusable. Losing to Charlotte by 13, no.
Not really.
Wake Forest by 12.
Yeah,
it's not great.
Yeah.
Marquette by 10.
Marquette's by 10 is excusable.
Yeah. Temple by 13.
Ugh.
That's not great.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. So, I guess we're hitting like the 50-minute mark. I'm thinking let's go to what I've been saying we're gonna do, which is Let's try to pretend like we're the selection committee and we are picking the top 16 teams. I assume some of these might be quick. Some of these might take a little longer. Like there might be a little more discussion. So I will say, if it feels like it's dragging a little bit, we'll have to set a timer and be like, all right, 10 seconds. Let's make a decision.
All right.
Cool. So real quick, let's establish some rules beforehand. Are we doing this solely based on resume and like team metrics, like KenPom, or are we?
I feel like we should have a little bit of projection involved.
A little bit of projection involved.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So on that note, who's the overall 1 seed? Because if we're including projection, do we not put Ohio State at number 1?
It's so hard. I do think they have been the best team so far this year.
Right, I agree with you.
But at the same time, I also don't know how good the UNC win's going to look eventually. Because if UNC is like an NIT team or something, then all of our thoughts about Ohio State go out the window for the most part. Not all of them. I mean, they're still a really good team. They beat
Villanova by
25.
They also smacked someone else, I think. Is it just so they beat Cincy? Although Cincy, that win,
great. Well, let's take a look. Villanova. They smacked Penn State.
They won. They beat Penn State by like 30. And then Penn State went around and beat Maryland. Granted, it's college basketball, so I don't look at that as like, oh, Ohio State's so much better than Maryland. But still, Penn State I would consider to be a quality win.
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, I agree with you in that if the tournament started today and we were only basing on resume, Ohio State has to be number 1 only because their resume is definitely the best of all the teams and they haven't lost. But on that note, who are you putting as the overall 1?
Oh, this is probably the hardest year to answer this question in a while.
Kansas?
That's what I was thinking. Even though they're nowhere near as good, in my opinion, as what I would think of being a number 1 overall seed being. Yeah, I think that's the safe pick right now. Like,
would you? Yeah,
I think that like there's no scenario in which Kansas is like trash for the rest of the year.
I feel the same way. How about, would you feel fine with putting Ohio State 1 and then Kansas 2?
Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's do that. Split the difference. There's a little, like you said, there's a little bit of projection we have to do with regard, but at the same time, Ohio State's resume undeniably is 1 seed worthy. And so, okay, here's where I think it gets interesting. Who are the last 2 1 seeds if we had to pick today?
Gonzaga?
I was going that way because of their win, not to overreact to 1 game, but they won at Washington, won at Arizona, beat Oregon, lost to a good Michigan team. I think Gonzaga as well has to be there.
You know, they did everything they had to do in their non-conference, and their conference schedule is going to be pretty easy. St. Mary's is going to be tough.
St. Mary's is always tough. BYU always plays them tough too, actually.
Yeah.
Although I don't know, BYU seems. Yeah, I don't know. They've had some good wins this year, but I don't know what to make of BYU. I also haven't seen them play, so I'm not gonna jump to judgment.
They played us earlier in the year, and
that's
those white dudes absolutely smacked us. I think that we ended up losing by 20 points or something, but their offense was just unstoppable.
Dude, I swear to God, they've had a Haas brother like BYU has had a Haas brother for like at least 10 years. Like I feel like this whole decade there's been a Haas.
Does that include Michigan years or no? I'm sorry, you should probably edit that out.
No, I mean, I just feel like I always. I don't think it. No, that's the. I don't feel like. I do always hear about Haas on BYU in some shape or form. Like I feel like every year this decade, whether it was TJ or Tyler.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the whole point is that like the 2-year mission just extends their like they're there for longer. Kind of like how what was that dude? Stillman White on UNC. Do you remember Stillman White?
I don't actually.
So he was the backup point guard for Kendall Marshall. And then he played because Kendall Marshall broke his wrist in the tournament. And then, like, I didn't hear from him. I didn't hear about this guy for a while. And then he was on the 2017 title team. And I was like, wait, what? Stillman White. I think he was on the 2016 title team. Basically, he took he did a mission, and then just like that, he was like, so he played with Kendall Marshall, and then he played with Joe Barry.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and Marcus Page, and Stillman White. Yeah, he joined UNC basketball in 2011, and then he finished in 2017. Yeah.
Damn.
Anyhow,
that's crazy.
So that was a fun little Haas mission tangent.
But Gonzaga's got it pretty easy.
Yeah, Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga's in good shape. Although, to be fair, if the selection committee has always been kind of brutal to Gonzaga, where like in years where Gonzaga is like ranked very high in the AP, they end up being seated lower than where the ranking suggests. So if they lose a game in conference play, I feel like that'll dock them like a seed line, which is I feel like that's not how it should be, but it's.
I mean, if it's St. Mary's, that's one thing. If it's like Long Beach State or whatever, that's another.
Yeah,
I don't even know if they're in the same conference.
So,
who else is in the West Coast Conference?
BYU.
Is it like San Francisco? Are they in that conference? San
Francisco and Pacific and Loyola.
Pacific, Loyola. Oh, Loyola.
Portland State.
Oh yeah. Santa Clara.
Steve Nash.
Pepperdine,
yeah. The point being, I feel like if Gonzaga loses, let's say Gonzaga loses to BYU. If they lose to BYU, I feel like they'd be moved to a 2. I feel like they'd be moved to a 2.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple years ago, Gonzaga, they lost 4 games. This was 2018. They lost 4 games, and they were a 4 seed. And they lost 1 game in conference play to St. Mary's that year, although St. Mary's wasn't as good that year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. The point being, I feel like the selection committee has been kind of mean to Gonzaga when they lose conference games. So,
yeah, but everyone's going to lose a conference game or two, like no matter how bad your conference is.
Yeah.
So
that's true. It is also a more, like you said, a year of parity. So maybe that won't be as much of a penalty on Gonzaga if it happens.
Mm-hmm. Who's the 4th 1 seed though?
Yeah, that's. I hate to say this. Is it Duke? Is it?
I don't know.
I mean, Duke's resume. If I'm projecting, I don't think it's Duke. If I go by resume, I think it's Duke.
But they got a terrible loss. They have probably the worst loss on their resume of anyone for a 1 seed.
Well, Kentucky has a worse loss, I would say.
Who's their loss again?
Evansville.
That's a pretty bad loss.
Okay. Well, so if it's not Duke, who is it? Memphis? Oregon?
Memphis requires a lot of projections. They're only like 29 in Ken Pom right now.
Oregon. Okay, I'm gonna throw out Oregon and Baylor.
Oof.
Baylor beat Butler.
Mm-hmm.
They beat Arizona. They beat Washington. They beat Villanova.
Mm-hmm.
Which is solid. They have 1 loss. It was a close loss to Washington on a neutral. And then they beat Villanova, Butler, and Arizona.
And
then Oregon, meanwhile, has only lost to UNC and Gonzaga. And
we'll see how that UNC loss looks, though.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Well, to be fair to UNC, UNC's losses are all like justifiable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean they haven't had a
bad
Boston or an Evansville.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you know what? Because Duke lost to SFA, I guess I can get behind you in saying we can't put them at a 1. But then who is? Okay, so Baylor, Oregon.
So here's the top 10 in Ken Pom right now. Okay, Ohio State, Duke, Louisville. Gotta think about that one. Kansas, Michigan State. Purdue, that's not going to last for long. Gonzaga, Kentucky, Maryland, Virginia.
Okay, so Duke, you said. I mean, Duke. I think we agree. Probably not because of Stephen F. Austin, despite that they have some really nice wins. Purdue can't be a one.
Do you put Louisville there?
So I was going to ask you, Louisville.
I don't think they're going to be a top 5 team by season's end.
You think so? Personally. I think they're the best team. I think they're going to win the regular season in the ACC.
I think that, well, it's hard to say because it's just hard for me to get behind a team that was a bubble team last year, bringing back the same exact guys.
Jordan Nwora is good. Well,
he's really good.
So they were a 7 seed last year. They were gonna be. They were. So a month before Selection Sunday, you know how they do that whole preview thing, kind of like not too dissimilar than what we're doing right now. But so when the bracket preview came out, Louisville was a 4, and then they just lost 8 of 10. And then they ended up as a 7. So like you said, and then they brought the exact same team back. So I do agree with you. It's like they were not elite last year. They showed progress last year, but they were not elite, and then they brought everyone back. So that is true. Jordan Nwora has looked good, but the thing is, who have they beaten outside of Michigan? The rest of their schedule kind of sucks. And then they lost to Texas Tech in a game I don't know. Is it – okay, so Louisville?
Maybe.
Okay, would you go with Louisville over Baylor? Because I think Baylor is clearly the either tied for the first or the second best team in the Big 12.
It's hard to say. I think that, well, let's take a look at Baylor's resume. Just the loss to Washington,
which is an explainable loss.
Wins against Villanova, Arizona, and Baylor.
Butler.
Butler. Yeah.
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 And then they still have a game at Florida in January, which is a chance to help out their resume. If we're doing a little bit of like projecting, like they have another good non-con opportunity, and
they've got 2 shots at every team in the Big 12.
Exactly. So, and I think they're the second best team in the Big 12, if not tied for the best.
Yeah, but I also think that the Big 12 is one of the deeper conferences, and
they'll take some losses.
So I'm not sure if we're going to be looking at them as a 1 seed. I think they're going to be like a very high level 2 or 3 seed by the end of it, just because I don't think that they are going to rack up enough wins.
Are you leaning Oregon or Louisville?
I would have said Maryland before the Penn State loss.
Before Penn State, yeah.
Because I don't love Penn State. I know you like Penn State. I've just never been a huge believer in Penn State. I've never thought they had enough offense, but their offense is better this year. So I'll give them that. But you know, what's crazy is that Michigan State is number 5 in KenPom.
Despite that they've taken losses.
They've taken 3 losses, and they haven't really been great losses, all of them, especially because I think that we're going to end up being pretty bad. I don't think that we're going to – Virginia Tech, I mean. I don't think that we're going to end up being particularly good. So I think that's going to look like a pretty bad loss.
The only loss that I think is fine is the neutral to Kentucky. Talking about Michigan State, like the getting blown out at home to Duke, I don't know how that looks.
Yeah, but I think that if you project with Michigan State, they look a little bit better.
Their metrics are good. That's the thing. Like
their metrics are really good, and you know, there's been other stuff going on with that team that
absolutely.
You know, and I think that if you're talking about a team that is going to get better, I think that
I would agree. Although, I all that said, you can't have them at the 1 line right now. At least not right now. At least not right now.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna put my neck out for Baylor.
Neck out for Baylor. Okay.
Do you have any? Is there anyone anyone you're gonna put your neck out for for this last one.
I've always loved Oregon, and I would put Oregon over Baylor, but I don't think either of them.
You think Oregon over Baylor? Okay, let's do a real quick, 1 minute tops, going over the resumes. We went over Baylor's resume. Oregon has wins over Memphis, and then they have a win at Michigan. And then they have a win over Seton Hall.
And they have close losses to Gonzaga and UNC. And the reason why I think that Oregon would have a better chance if we project a little bit is because the Pac-12 was a lot worse
than the Big 12.
And I think that they're going to rack up more wins. And I think that objectively, if you just look at the quality of the teams, they're probably about the same.
So you think that? Well, you think Oregon's wins so far are better than Baylor's wins?
I think the resumes are pretty equivalent. But if you project further, I see Oregon as a team that has a better chance to rack up more wins. I also think that Dana Altman's a better coach than Scott Drew. So
okay. You know what? Oregon has played a harder schedule so far, according to Ken Pom, and they're hiring Ken Pom. Wow, this is weird, but I'm gonna put Oregon at 4.
Yes.
Okay. So the 2s.
So looking at the
candidates, I think Baylor's got to be a 2.
I think Baylor can be a 2.
I'll put Baylor there. Okay, so we got 3 more 2s.
I think now you got to throw Duke.
I think now you got to wait. So Duke over Louisville? Duke ahead of Louisville or Louisville first? So Duke definitely has better wins, but their loss is also a lot worse.
Their loss is really bad, but the metrics are about the same, and Louisville's strength of schedule has been really bad so far.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to say. And if you project, I think Duke's going to end up being better.
I personally think Louisville's going to be better, but I agree with everything else you've said.
I think that right now Louisville is ahead of them.
Sure. Okay. So we got 2 more 2 seeds to go. My question to you is when do we start talking about some Big East and Pac-12 teams, or is it too early for that? 2 line. Who has Villanova beaten?
Villanova.
They lost to Ohio State and Baylor. I don't think they have anything else too notable. They're gonna play Kansas. That's the thing. They're playing Kansas this Saturday. At home, so that'll be big. But
let's take a look. Who have they beaten? Big East, Villanova. They got smacked by Ohio State. They lost to Baylor by 9. Their best win is probably against Mississippi State. I don't know how good Middle Tennessee is this year. They've been good in the past, but I don't think they're very good right now.
I think if you put stock in Villanova, it's more projective as opposed to resume.
Their resume is not great. I mean, they lost to both the good teams.
But to be fair, like I said, they're going to have opportunities against Kansas and then the Big East.
Yeah, and they're definitely a well-coached team, and they'll be fine. But
they're going to win a lot of Big East games, so it's hard to. I mean, I feel like like I said, Villanova. If you're going to put Villanova high, it's a little more projective.
Yeah, that's a pretty deep conference, though. Like, not that they're going to get a ton of teams into the tournament, but I think that the bottom of that conference doesn't suck.
I think DePaul has a shot at the tournament.
Yeah,
they've been better. They've been good this year, actually.
I think that the worst teams in the conference, like
Providence and St.
John's, and they're not bad. Like, they're fine. They don't suck.
Yeah.
I'm
trying to think. Who? Okay, so if there's 2 more spots for 2s, is it Louisville?
I think Louisville.
Is it Louisville and Maryland? Is Maryland a 2?
Well, how good do you think Penn State is? Because I don't think they're that good.
I think Penn State's like a 9 seed.
They're pretty good.
I think Penn State's a 9 seed.
That's got to be Maryland. Yeah. If going off the assumption that Penn State's a 9 seed, it's got to be Maryland.
Okay, okay. Well, I guess we'll see how that Penn State prediction ages.
Yeah.
But okay, so Maryland is Louisville a 2? Okay, would you take Louisville or Kentucky? And ironically, they're going to play each other.
I think Kentucky's probably a better team, but I think
they have
such a bad loss. Yeah, I can't take Kentucky.
So
I can't take Kentucky
Louisville?
at this point.
You
Yeah,
go
I'll go
Louisville?
Louisville. Yeah.
Okay, so that takes us to our 3s. Okay. Now I think you can start bringing in Memphis into the conversation.
I think you can bring
Arizona?
in Memphis.
Arizona?
Maybe Arizona.
Wait, who has Arizona beaten? Because they lost to Baylor and they lost to Gonzaga, but they were competitive in those games, which is I'm trying to think.
See.
They smacked Illinois, but Illinois is like a middling Big Ten team. I think Illinois is a tournament team, but I don't think Illinois is an elite team. I think Washington honestly goes before Arizona, considering that Washington has the win over Baylor and they were competitive against Gonzaga, although Arizona was also competitive against Gonzaga. Oh, that's tough because Washington lost to Tennessee. I'm thinking.
You know who I want to bring in? I want to bring in Dayton.
Dayton. Okay.
I want to bring in Dayton.
Auburn hasn't lost, so.
Auburn hasn't lost, but.
Okay, so wait, let's see. Auburn, Dayton, Memphis?
Auburn, Dayton, Memphis. But I feel like there's some teams that we haven't included yet. Like, have we brought Virginia into the fold yet?
Not yet. You think 3? Based on what they've done so far, the only wins that really impressed me are UNC, although that was one of the ugliest games I've ever seen. And then the win over Vermont is decent. It's okay. Everything else is just kind of like eh.
Yeah, but I also think that
the metrics are very in Virginia's favor, at least defensively.
The metrics are in their favor, and I also think that I think the ACC is going to have a hard time beating them this year because I don't think there's enough offense in the conference. To be honest, I don't think that there are those explosive offensive players in the conference like there have been in years past.
I mean, I thought Cole Anthony was one of them, but to be fair, they're going to get UNC gets another crack at Virginia in Chapel Hill, so we'll see. But Cole Anthony's first attempt did not go so hot. And
I think Nworo's going to have a tough time against UVA.
Yeah,
just because I think they're just going to double team him for the entire game every time he gets the ball, and unless Ryan McMahon just absolutely pops off.
Yeah. Real quick. Okay, so you said Dayton. So we got Dayton, UVA in the conversation. Washington, Arizona.
Butler?
My question to you, Butler, absolutely. San Diego State. San Diego State has a win at BYU. They beat Creighton. They beat Iowa, and they haven't lost. Or would you? I don't know. Well, how do you feel about San Diego State? I'm talking like as a 4. As a 4.
As maybe. A 4, I could see it, but it's too bad.
Dude, how have we forgotten Michigan?
Oh, we haven't said Michigan. Oh, Michigan's got to be a 3.
Michigan's got it. I think Michigan's wins are too good. So
their wins are definitely too
Michigan's
good.
Michigan's a 3.
Michigan's got to be a 3.
Michigan, and then after Michigan, we have 3 more 3s. Would you put UVA next?
UVA doesn't have a good enough win, but I think if you're projecting a 3 as a fair spot for them, I would put. I think that Dayton is a safe pick at 3 because I think that they're not going to have too tough of a time in their conference. I think VCU will give some trouble, but I think outside of that, they're just head and shoulders above everybody in the Big Ten, Atlantic 10.
What's their quality win? What's Dayton's quality win, though? I think the committee's going to dock them because they kept it close with Kansas, but that's not that they don't have a win.
That is true. Well,
I would honestly put Kentucky here.
You would put Kentucky.
I would put Kentucky here based on the Michigan State win and the fact that I think they're probably going to win the SEC.
Yeah, you're right.
And they're gonna have, like I said, they have chances at they play Ohio State and then Louisville. But this is obviously this could go way up or way down.
Definitely. Well, Dayton did beat St. Mary's on the road by 10. That's a quality win. But
I would say okay.
But I do think Kentucky is better than them.
I feel like Dayton. If Dayton romps through the A10, I feel like they're gonna be like a best case 3 or 4 if they romp through the A10.
We'll see. I think they got the Maui bump with media attention, so I think that they're. I think that they're a team that maybe if they have like a 4 seed resume, they might get a little bit overseeded because everyone knows who Obi Toppin is. Do you know what I mean?
True. Yeah. You know what? You want to put Dayton at.
Yes.
Okay, let's go Dayton.
Let's do it.
Okay, so this last 3, Auburn. I'm thinking Auburn maybe Butler.
Butler.
I think it's got to be Butler.
I think it's got to be Butler as well.
Butler. Okay, so these last 4 teams, we got 4 more teams to round out the top 4 seed lines. I'm thinking in the conversation we got Villanova, Michigan State, Memphis.
I think Michigan State has to be there. Because their metrics are too good.
So you got Memphis, Michigan State, Arizona, or Washington. I think one Pac-12 team.
I think Arizona's probably the better team, but
Arizona.
I think that Washington might have a slightly better resume right now. I think Arizona. I think Arizona. Yeah. I think Washington's destined to be like a 6 seed that.
I actually think they're going to be in the
zone.
I actually think they'll surprise some people, but I'm a little biased because I got to see Jaden McDaniels and Isaiah Stewart in person, and Dallas Carter. So I'm a little biased. But
True.
Okay, so I'm thinking Memphis, Michigan State, and then so we got Memphis and Michigan State. Was there someone else that we mentioned? Oh, Arizona.
So either Arizona. One more spot.
Okay, so. The contenders for this last spot: Auburn, San Diego State, UVA.
We haven't put UVA in there. I think
UVA.
I think UVA has to be there.
Would you put UVA over Arizona? You think UVA over Arizona?
No.
Okay, so UVA with the last spot.
I think UVA with the last spot. I think that UVA projecting wise, I think that they're going to have a pretty good chance to win the conference because I think the ACC is just. So? I think the ACC is just worse this year than it was in previous years. And I think that the pack line thrives when you don't have guys that can just beat you one-on-one off the dribble. And so even though I think UVA is a lot worse this year, I think that the defense is going to win them a ton of games in the conference. And then, and when that happens, Tony Bennett is like guaranteed coach of the year, win the conference with that sorry roster. You know? I mean, not a sorry roster. Y'all are good. Y'all are just nowhere near.
Don't get me wrong. It's a drop off from last year roster.
And I think that like objectively speaking, you guys like maybe have like the 5th best roster in the conference, but I think that just because of like, the system, it's y'all are gonna win a lot more games in an ACC that kind of lacks offense. I think we could beat you once though, because I think that we're just gonna have
rivalry games. I feel like always I feel like those rivalry games like have always been pretty or either a lot of them are really competitive. Like,
yeah, I think that we're gonna be one of those teams that goes like, I don't know, like 7-13 in the ACC or whatever, but we're gonna ruin like 5 teams' resumes.
I mean, hey, y'all might have done it to Michigan State. Not ruin it, but like
not ruin it.
Put a blip on Michigan State's resume.
We definitely put a blip into it. I think that. Yeah.
So we've got our top 16 in. I did want to say, I'm thinking we should do this again in like when there's more games played. And where we can do a little more research beforehand so that we can make the process little quicker from like team to team, ranking to ranking.
Yeah,
but
for
I do
sure.
think that
And
I do think that this is like a fun exercise, especially the closer you get to March. Like just trying to like because it's so easy to just slander the committee, but it's like, okay, put yourself in the committee shoes and then be like, okay, these are tough trade-offs I have to make, and these I have to value, and I have to be consistent with what I value and whatnot.
yeah.
So I definitely think it's a fun exercise, especially I think yeah, I'm thinking we do this later in like, I don't know, late January, early February. I think it could be some solid podcast content. Real quick, let's say I just want to take a look at what we have. So our 1 seeds, ironically, so we have Ohio State, Kansas, Gonzaga, and Oregon. Granted, I don't think Oregon's going to stay there.
I don't think
I could see I think the other 3 could stay there. I don't think Oregon's going to stay there. But that said, what's really interesting is if like they used our rankings,
no
there would
ACC.
be 2 teams. There would be 2 teams, West Coast teams, as 1 seed, which I don't remember the last time that happened because it's been
no
a while.
ACC, no SEC, no Big East.
Yeah,
that's something.
So I guess in this scenario, I think you would send Ohio State to the Midwest. You would send Ohio State to the Midwest in Indianapolis. I think you would send Kansas to the South in Houston. So then you would send Gonzaga to the West, LA. And then you would send Oregon East to New York City, which is ironic because in most years, the East is one of the first regions off the board. Is maybe East Coast basketball, college basketball is just a little down this year. I mean, the ACC, I think, is down. And I think the Big 12 is one of the better conferences. So that's a little more Southwest, Midwest. Big 10, similar deal. Yeah, no, that's just interesting. The fact that in our rankings, we have 2 teams from the West Coast.
And the first ACC team off the board is Duke.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be the case in March. But hey, maybe I'll be wrong. You wait. So you think it's going to be UVA? Because I think it's going to be Louisville, but maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid.
I mean, I think that Louisville's better than UVA, but I also think that Louisville's going to have a hard time beating UVA.
Oh, yeah. I agree. I
think in a down ACC, UVA is the team built to thrive, even though they're not one of the top 4 best teams.
That's true. My thought is, yeah, no, that is a good point. Like, if it's a down year in the ACC, like, UVA naturally is going to just rack up wins in the regular season. Yeah, no, I don't know.
But you know, if you guys lose to like Wake Forest or Georgia Tech or someone, then all bets are off.
Yeah, my money is still on Louisville winning the ACC, but that's just, we'll see how that ages. Also, I expect right now the only Big East team we have is Butler in the top 16, but I anticipate that Villanova is going to skyrocket, and once they get a couple more wins under their belt, and they probably win or like do really well in Big East play. I'm a little bummed out that Seton Hall looked good in their loss to Michigan State, and since then it's been kind of downhill. And
now Powell's injured.
Yeah, I was buying high on Seton Hall heading into the year. That's something I did miss. Or granted, I think Seton Hall still can be a good team, but right now they're off to a poor start.
So
yeah, honestly, yeah.
Which conference gets the most bids this year?
Oh, Big Ten.
Big Ten, yeah.
I told you this. Big Ten. I think Big Ten gets 9 bids.
Oof. Yeah, I mean, I can see it.
Because, okay, let's go through the conferences real quick. ACC ain't touching 9 because ACC, you got Louisville, Duke, UNC, UVA, Florida State as like a guaranteed 5. Beyond that, NC State probably gets in that 6. Who else gets in? Like, I want Virginia Tech, if they go 11-9, if they go 11-9 or 10-10, is in the conversation.
I've watched every Virginia Tech game. We're not making the tournament.
I was gonna say, I don't think you guys are a tournament team. Notre Dame, I had high hopes for Notre Dame because I believed in Mike Bray. They've been shaky. They've been shaky. I like Chris Likes in Miami, but Miami's been Syracuse has been not great. Georgia Tech's not even. Georgia Tech's also banned from the tournament. but
hey, Bubba Parham's fun.
Bubba Parham is fun.
I wanted him to transfer to us, but he didn't.
I mean, who else in the ACC? Honestly, the ACC might be 6 bids, which is still good, but like
That's pretty bad for the ACC.
it's bad for the ACC considering there's 15 teams. But like, don't get me wrong, most leagues would love to have 6 teams in.
Yeah, but it also means that say Liberty doesn't win the Big South or whatever. Are they in the Atlantic Sun or Big South?
They are the Atlantic Sun.
They're in the Atlantic Sun. Say that Liberty doesn't win the Atlantic Sun. That's a 2-bid league. If the ACC is only getting like 6 teams in.
Well, here's the thing. I think the Big East could be a 7 or 8 bid league. So if you have 7 or 8 from the Big East, and let's say that my Big Ten prediction holds true.
Well, who's your 7 or 8 from the Big East?
I think in the conversation,
it's like Butler, DePaul, Xavier, Villanova,
Seton Hall,
Marquette,
and then Georgetown and Creighton in the conversation.
Oh, I don't think Georgetown's.
I don't think Georgetown. Okay, I don't think Georgetown will make it, but based on what they've done so far, they're at least in that like first 4 out conversation, right?
I think Georgetown's going to crush a couple resumes, but I don't think they're a tournament team. And
they've also lost so many guys to transfer.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think. Okay, so take
if you look at
Georgetown
their resume, like, okay, so they got smashed by Penn State. They lost to UNC Greensboro by 4. They only lost to Duke by 8, but I don't think they have enough guys. I mean, we'll see. I mean, Mac McClung, he's been balling this year, though. He's really been balling.
Yeah. What else? I mean, okay, so even if you take Georgetown out and you put Creighton in, that's like 6 or 7 teams from the Big East. Also, I think the Big 12 could get 7 or 8. Basically, okay, right now, as of today, I feel like everyone in the Big 12 except for Kansas State and TCU could reasonably be in the tournament.
Let's take a look. Except for Kansas State and TCU. TCU.
I feel like everyone else could reasonably be in the tournament.
Who's Iowa State lost to so far?
They lost to Seton Hall. But the thing is, they split with Seton Hall. They played Seton Hall twice, and then they lost in the Bahamas to, I think it was Gonzaga. So they lost to Michigan. They've lost to Michigan, Oregon State, and Seton Hall. And then
Iowa.
They lost to Iowa. Ooh, but they could still be like, they're still very much in the tournament picture, like.
Yeah, I can see it.
So the point being, the Big 12 has 8 teams in contention. I don't think all 8 make it, but there's 8 teams in contention.
What do we think of West Virginia? Pretty good win against Wichita by 12. Bad loss to St. John's.
Hard to tell until they play more Big 12 teams.
Yeah, I mean, they smashed Pitt, but I don't think Pitt's very good this year.
Yeah.
That's an impossible job. I think Jeff Capel made a mistake leaving to go to Pitt, to be honest.
It's a tough job. I mean, Jamie Dixon had it rolling.
In the Big East, like in the ACC, it's brutal because
that's true,
your recruiting footprint changes. You know, like you can't recruit, like, because the Big East would always recruit the New York guys, being like, "Hey, you can play, you know, in the Garden. You know, you can play against, you know, all of these other teams, you know, in the area."
And like, the Big East also had a more physical brand that I think was more in line with Pitt. Old Big East.
But, like, now, like, if you're Pitt, you're trying to recruit guys from the Northeast, being like, hey, like, we got a real big game against, like, Florida State coming up, and it's like...
yeah.
You know, it's different.
That's a good point. Yeah, so I guess, to answer your original question, I think it's the Big Ten that has the most bids. But in the conversation, I'd say Big 12 is in the conversation. I think those are the 2 best conferences, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Those are probably the 2 best conferences this year. And then the ACC is probably 3rd or 4th, with the Big East also in the conversation. Yeah.
Like, where do we have a surprise 2-bid league, though? I think that the Atlantic Sun is one of the more likely ones, just because I think that Liberty is probably going to be in no matter what.
Probably going to be in. Well, do we consider the Mountain West a surprise if they get 2 bids?
No, that's not a surprise.
Yeah, that's not really a surprise. Same. Oh, West Coast Conference probably gets 2 bids as well, but that's not a surprise.
Yeah, it's too bad that the Mountain West isn't better than it is because they have such a high ceiling. Because if San Diego State, New Mexico, Utah State, Nevada, and UNLV,
UNLV is what it's supposed, not even what it was, but like what it can be.
Yeah.
Like even like when they had Anthony Bennett, they were like a 5 seed. They were a 5 seed, like, and that's not even like peak UNLV. So it's like, I don't know. It's been a while since UNLV's been good.
I mean, they played a pretty brutal schedule so far this year, but they've gotten smashed by some bad teams. They lost to Kansas State by 4, Cal by 4, UCLA by 17, Texas State by 7.
Oh yeah, that's
SMU
that's
by 4, Cincinnati by 7, BYU by 33.
Holy shit! Wait, holy shit! I didn't realize. Wow.
They're pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, they just got a new coach, so give them time.
I think the coach is good, but
yeah, it's his first year, so give them time.
If the Mountain West, if all 5 of those teams are good, then
the Mountain West, yeah,
because I remember even like back like 6-7 years ago, like when. Like New Mexico and San Diego State were both really good.
UNLV was also
UNLV was still decent. Utah State was pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the teams like Wyoming, Fresno State, and Colorado State are always gonna have a tough time being relevant.
I think I can see 1 year. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I can see like some years where Boise State can be relevant just because. They just have a brand, but they've just never really been a great basketball team.
Yeah, that's fair. Did not think I was going to be talking about the Mountain West, but here we are. So I've kept you here on this for over 90 minutes. So I think we've completing our little bracket exercise. I think that's a good place to wrap up, but do want to thank you for being on. Hopefully this, we've talked about hopefully having some consistency and just chatting some college hoops and doing this on the regular. So hopefully hopefully I'll have you on many more times to come.
We got to do an NBA episode one of these days.
Absolutely. Yeah. You are always welcome on. So once again, I want to thank you for taking the time to be on. And I want to thank the listeners. For taking the time to listen. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, leave a good review, or you can be critical if you want on whatever platform you're listening to, whether it's Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, or YouTube. And with that, I will catch you guys soon. And once again, thank you, Justin.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was great.